Chapter 495 to 496. Seeing Danzo's straightforward and guilt-free face, Fujin shook his head in disdain. The young Danzo may really have the belief in shouldering all evils and protecting Konoha from the shadows. But after staying in the shadows for so long, Danzo has changed and has completely lost himself in the pursuit of power. The term for Konoha might have been his belief years ago, but now it has become an excuse for him to hypnotize himself and make him feel self-righteous. To him, it is as long as he keeps murmuring for Konoha in his mouth, all his betrayal to the village becomes an expedient measure that could be forgiven, no matter how damaging they are, and all the sacrifices made by others become something that should be taken for granted. In the canon, whether it was on the night of Nine-Tailed Demon Fox's attack, initiated by Obito, that led to the death and sacrifice of the Yondaime couple and many Konoha shinobi and civilians, Konoha Collapse Plan, launched by Orochimaru, which resulted in the death of Sandaime Hokage and many Konoha shinobi and civilian or Nagato's act of destroying Konoha, which would have also resulted in the death of tens of thousands Konoha. Throughout these attacks, Danzo's root was missing. Every time the village suffers, Danzo is missing. His root does not try to help in solving the problem. Instead, they remain on standby. This alone shows that Danzo regards his own power as more important than the village, and what he truly wants to protect is not Konoha, but his own status. This is why this time Fujin did not conceal his disdain for Danzo, and with a mocking sneer, he said, "I will go out and see." Bishojo-chan was surprised by Fujin's words, but she made sure that her surprise was completely masked. Orochimaru, on the other hand, looked at Fujin with a curious expression. Is Amatsukami also going to make their move? In that case, I must not miss such a good show. Then he also stood up and said, "I will come along. I am also quite curious about the monster that has attacked the village." "Suit yourself," said Fujin, and started to walk towards the exit of the laboratory. Danzo was a little annoyed. "The experiment has reached a critical junction. Are you going to give it up halfway?" Fujin, who just passed by Danzo, said with a casual tone, "Just going out to take a look. This doesn't affect our agreement." Danzo turned around, tapped his crutch in annoyance, and said with a sullen face, "The Akatsuki organization has been preparing so long for the revenge. Their plan this time will definitely not be easy. Is Amatsukami going to dirty itself in the muddy waters?" Fujin, who was walking outside, stopped and glanced back at Danzo. It sounds weird when a Konoha elder is giving such warning to this one, a member of Amatsukami. If people who don't have any impression of our identities were to see such a scene, I am afraid they would believe that this one is the elder, and you are the mercenary. Having said that, Fujin no longer stayed and quickly walked towards the exit several levels above. Looking at the leaving figure of Fujin, Danzo said coldly, "My experiment has not been completed yet. I hope you don't lose your life because of your curiosity." On the side, Orochimaru, who also passed by Danzo, said in a hoarse tone, "Worried about him, are you? He is a real monster." Danzo frowned. "You seem to have inexplicable confidence in him?" Orochimaru said nothing, just smiled mysteriously, and followed behind Fujin. Soon, Fujin and Orochimaru left Danzo's underground root base. After arriving on the ground, Fujin looked at the distance from where constant roars echoed and asked Orochimaru, walking on the side, "How long has it been since Shimura Danzo fought against someone strong?" Orochimaru immediately understood what Fujin meant, and said with a smile, "Quite a few years, if I must say. And Shinobi of Darkness is what he calls himself. After staying so long in the shadows, he may not be able to adapt to the sun." One of the many reasons why both Orochimaru and Fujin dare to completely assist Shimura Danzo, and do not hold back any knowledge in the improvement of Chimera Jutsu, is that both of them understand Danzo's true nature quite well. Aside from the idea of using Danzo as a pawn, they also know that Danzo is not that big of a threat, because he has lost the fearless heart of a strong man. Those who do not have the fearless heart of a strong will never be able to truly accomplish anything. Danzo is the best example. He has forgotten that he is firstly a Konoha shinobi, and then a Konoha elder. For such a cowardly person, even if Chimera Jutsu is improved, and even if he is allowed to complete the ritual in a better state, and even if he is allowed to acquire the power, he still won't be able to become daunting enough, because cowardness is rooted in his bones. He doesn't seem to realize that this shinobi world has long since changed. As he said, Fujin jumped higher, and instantly a pair of iron sand wings spread out behind his back. Then with those pair of wings, Fujin flew in the direction of Konoha at an incredibly fast speed. Orochimaru looked at the disappearing figure of Fujin and licked his lips with a smile. "It appears that my guess is correct. Amatsukami truly does intend to make their move. Let's see how it turns out this time." On the other side, Fujin, who was worried about the safety of Yui, quickly flew towards Konoha. By now, the sun has already set on the western horizon, and only a dim afterglow is left. But this dimness of twilight did not affect Fujin's vision, who has already activated his Byakugan. Standing on top of the half-destroyed outer wall, he looked at the two monsters who were fighting one another. One side is Gamabunta, and standing on top of his head is Jiraiya, one of the legendary Sannin, while on the other side is a black monster with a pair of giant crow-like wings. As soon as Fujin saw the monster, he had a look of realization. Isn't that Satori, the puppet of the box of ultimate bliss? So the Akatsuki organization has really teamed up with Kuzugakuer, huh? After recognizing who is the culprit behind the attack on Konoha, Fujin frowned. Fujin does have some impression of this monster named Satori. According to the legend, this monster seemed to be able to detect fear in people's hearts and any attack filled with bloodlust. Therefore, attacking it is an extremely difficult task for those who have some kind of fear in their hearts and those who intend to kill it. After Fujin observed the battle for a while, he soon realized that the legend is indeed true. No matter what kind of attack Jiraiya and his summoned toad Gamabunta made, they really couldn't hurt him at all. Bored, he turned his gaze, and upon noticing a black cubicle box with several strange faces embossed on all its sides, he muttered with a thoughtful expression. That should be the box of ultimate bliss? In his Byakugan vision, Fujin could see a strong evil chakra emanating from the box of ultimate bliss. This evil chakra is constantly resonating with the souls of villagers. As a result, it is stirring up their hearts and corrupting their minds. Many villagers who were too late to evacuate have gradually lost their souls and are influenced by this evil chakra, and are being controlled like a puppet into forming a long queue and slowly walking inside the box of ultimate bliss. At the same time, a long queue of people and shinobi, who are already corrupted by the box of ultimate bliss, are exiting the box and causing further chaos in the village. So, it also has the ability to form an army of its own, much like the demon Morio. The only difference is that the nature of the army is different. Morio forms indestructible stone soldiers, while this box of ultimate bliss forms an army of corrupted human puppets, thought Fujin. Boom. Suddenly, an explosion occurred, and at the same time, Gamabunta, who was thrown away by Satori, abruptly flew out and heavily hit the ground, as a result overturning the entire street. At this time, Satori, who was floating in the air, condensed a red-colored giant chakra spear, like a small bijudama, and suddenly fired it towards Gamabunta, who had previously fallen on the ground. Boom. There was another loud explosion, and Gamabunta, who was hit by the giant chakra sphere, made a muffled and painful roar. Fujin has been silently observing the beating of Gamabunta and Jiraiya. Of course, he doesn't mind helping the village, but firstly, the safety of people close to him, such as Yui, Cheyenne, Niji, and other relatives and friends, must be confirmed. This is why he did not immediately intervene in the battle, but focused on confirming their safety. Then, if time permits, he will change back into his main body and find a chance to intervene in the battle. But just when he was about to leave towards the territory of the Hyuga clan, from the corner of his eyes, Fujin noticed that a large group of Konoha shinobi was rushing towards the zone where the battle between Jiraiya plus Gamabunta and Satori was taking place. The leader of this group of shinobi is not someone else but Tsunade Hime, the other legendary Sannin, and what's more, most of the shinobi following her were Chunin, except for 2 Jonin. Of course, Fujin is not worried about most of those Chunin or Tsunade Hime, but someone else who is also part of the team. Now he no longer has the option of first ensuring the safety of people close to him. Therefore, without even a shred of thought or hesitation, Fujin rushed toward Jiraiya and Satori. Noting the arrival of reinforcements, Satori immediately fell from the sky and instantly broke through the formation of Tsunade Hime and the shinobi under her command. Satori's sharp long claws were like highly sharp knives and drew a long ravine on the ground. Anyone that came in its path was pierced and killed instantly. Seeing the huge claw approaching her, Yui, who was also part of the team, immediately took the battle stance and started to emit chakra from all her tenketsu in order to use revolving heaven with the objective of repelling the claw. But Satori's speed was too fast, and even before she could start spinning, the claw had already reached her neck. Time seemed to have slowed down, and Satori's claw appeared closer and closer. The moment it touched the skin on Yui's neck, a small cut appeared at that spot. From the cut part, drops of blood flowed out. But the claw did not stop there, and continued further to completely tear her down, and no hope in sight. Tsunade Hime could see that Satori's speed is too fast for anyone in the immediate vicinity to be able to react, and only she might have the chance of being able to save Yui's life. But blood and corpses in the surroundings made her instantly weak. Her fear of blood kicked in. A look of horror appeared on her face, making her unable to exert even a bit of her strength. Now I won't even be able to save my disciple? This thought emerged in her mind as the death of her brother Nawaki and her lover Dan flashed in her head, and all her hopes seemed to be collapsing. Damn it all to hell. Screech. Bang. Boom. Smash. But just as Satori's claw was about to completely tear Yui, a loud smashing sound echoed in the surroundings, and the next thing everyone knew was that the monster named Satori flew away into the distance, rolled over a few streets, and collided with a building, immediately destroying it in the process, and then further continuing to roll over, and finally stopped after smashing into the outer wall of the village. What just happened? Muttered one of the shinobi in a confused tone. The sudden change of events surprised everyone, and everyone was confused as to how exactly was Satori smashed away. You know that monster is as big as Gamabunta, and yet it was smashed away to a distance of hundreds of meters. How much physical strength does one need to be able to do so? And when it comes to the matter of physical strength, obviously everyone thought of Senju Tsunade, but Senju Tsunade was also looking around in confusion, which clearly indicated that it wasn't her who did this but somebody else. But who exactly? At this time, a giant iron spear fell from the ground, and a figure landed on top of the giant spear, made up of black iron sand. Everyone looked at the figure calmly standing on top of the giant spear. The figure was wearing a black cloak with a yin-yang symbol, and the symbols of 5 basic chakra natures on the back of it, along with a green mask with a wind pattern on it. From the manner the other party was dressed, everyone recognized who he is. A member of Amatsukami? Yui, who had fallen to the ground, also stared at the strange figure standing on top of the black iron spear with a dazed expression. It wouldn't be wrong to say that was a bit scared a moment ago, and almost felt as if she is about to die. But because of her Byakugan, she also saw that it was him who saved her. While Yui looked at Fujin with a dazed expression, Fujin glanced at Yui without revealing any trace. Seeing that she was only a bit scared and not to hurt with just a small cut on her neck, Fujin breathed a sigh of relief and immediately cursed. Stupid girl. Haven't I already told her to not participate in dangerous battles? This level of fierce battle, where even Jiraiya-sama couldn't do anything, and she still dares to move forward? If I hadn't made it in time, then she would be dead right now. Humph. When all this mess is cleared up, I think I will have to teach her a few things again. He was really scared a few moments ago, and almost had his heart explode in nervousness. This is also the reason why, when he smashed Satori, he didn't restrain too much of his strength. As a result, Satori flew all the way, and collided with the outer wall hundreds of meters from here. Originally, Fujin had planned to stay hidden in the dark, first let the village make its move, and when all the members of Akatsuki appear on the stage, then he would choose a suitable opportunity to make a sneak attack on Nagato or Obito and solve at least one of them. But when he noticed that Yui was in danger, he couldn't care about his plan anymore and hurriedly intervened in the battle, because if he hadn't then she would have definitely died. Although he saved her by doing so, he, who was hidden in the dark, also jumped into the bright, and was now the center of all attention, whether from the village or from the Akatsuki. As such, he is in somewhat of a passive situation. But now that he has already taken action, so regretting it or getting annoyed over it won't help much. Not to mention he did this to save Yui's life. The importance of Yui's life for him is self-evident, and a mere wind nature clone can never even come close to how important she is. Therefore, Fujin did not feel any trouble, and after pondering over it a little he immediately decided to ridicule Konoha Shinobi, who had been so embarrassed by Satori. It's really all trash here, makes me surprised a little bit. Is it really true as the rumors suggest? Konoha, the strongest of the 5 great shinobi villages, has such pathetic strength. Tsunade stood up with strong support at this moment and asked with a frown, "Are you a member of Amatsukami?" Of course, for now, she decided to ignore the matter of the other party ridiculing Konoha, because no matter what, he did save her disciple's life, which she, herself, couldn't. Fujin looked down and glanced at Tsunadeheim with a thoughtful expression. He is 100% certain that Tsunadeheim is still being plagued by hemophobia, fear of blood. Therefore, she can't show her true strength. And if it weren't for Fujin's action of saving Yui's life, she wouldn't have been able to rescue her disciple, and would have to witness the death of her disciple, which might have even made her phobia worse. But since that didn't happen, so her phobia did not get worse, and Fujin could see that the current Tsunade's symptoms upon the sight of blood are much milder than he had initially expected. In the canon, Tsunade would basically collapse at the mere sight of blood, until she overcame her homophobia because of being influenced by Uzumaki Naruto's talk no jutsu. However, in this scene, flesh and blood are basically flying around her, and blood has even splashed on her clothes and face. Yet she did not collapse completely, and is able to push herself and stand, while gritting her teeth, and her consciousness also seems to be clear enough to observe the battlefield and make a subjective judgment. All these signs indicate that she has started to overcome her fear of blood. In fact, before coming back to the village, Tsunade had already made up her mind to get over her fear of blood. This is because she is very clear that sooner or later, she too would have to participate in battles against the Akatsuki organization. Then there was her meeting with Orochimaru before returning to the village, and her later discussion with Hyuga Kuroto, which finally made up her mind. Therefore, she has already begun to try to overcome her hemophobia in private. And her efforts have not been in vain. She has somewhat overcome her fear of blood, so the sight of a little blood does not affect her anymore, therefore. Upon the orders of Sandaime Hokage, she led a team in order to support Jiraiya. But she didn't expect that as soon as they appeared on the battlefield, Satori changed his target and went after her and her subordinates and even killed many of them. As a result, she was forced to witness the bloodiest scene and couldn't bear it for a while. As for the reason why Satori changed his target immediately, Fujin attributes it to the fear in her heart. Satori is able to sense fear in the hearts of others, so it's quite possible that Satori sensed the fear in Tsunade's heart and acted accordingly. As for how did Fujin manage to hit him despite Satoru's special abilities? It's actually quite simple. It was just a lucky shot. Fujin doesn't expect to be able to land another hit anytime soon. In fact, even before initiating the attack, Fujin didn't really expect that he would be able to land a hit on Satoru, nor did he have that intention. His intention was just to direct intense blood, lust on Satoru, that would make Satoru vigilant and back off, unexpectedly. Fujin managed to land a hit on him, which was surprising. Whoosh! Whyish, 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 whyish. While Fujin and others were thinking of various things, Satoru got up and flew here at an extremely high speed. After coming closer, he spread his wings wide, and instantly hundreds of black feathers as sharp as the sharpest blades were shot toward the ground at an astonishing speed. Fujin didn't care and just waved his right hand upwards. Under the influence of Fujin's magnet release chakra, black iron sand rose out of the ground and immediately turned into a shield big enough to protect everyone on the battlefield. Ding 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 ding. Although Satoru's feathers were extremely sharp, however, when they collided with iron sand shield, they still couldn't pass through it. As a result, a metal collision symphony echoed in the surroundings as the feathers kept colliding with the iron sand shield. And while Fujin stopped Satoru's onslaught, Tsunade gave the order to her disciples, "Quickly, heal the injured ones," then turned towards Fujin and questioned, "Why are you helping us? What are Amatsukumi's intentions?" Fujin saw that Yui was treating the wounded around her regardless of her own safety and sighed slightly. Then listening to Tsunade's question, he snorted coldly and said, "Helping you? Don't be ridiculous. Why would I help lowly creatures like you? I just think that this monster is quite interesting, that's all." Having said that, Fujin directed more magnet release chakra to control more iron sand that appeared out of the ground. But this time he did not use it to attack Satoru. Instead, he used this iron sand to carefully moor Yui, Shizune, and other Konoha shinobi in the vicinity to a safe distance from the battlefield. Tsunade had a tick mark on her forehead when she heard Fujin calling her a lowly creature. But when she noticed that Fujin was also helping these lowly creatures in his mouth to evacuate from the battlefield, she didn't pursue it anymore. Instead, she asked, "What do you plan to do?" Fujin said in a deliberately cold tone, "Take away these trashy shinobi of yours and get far away from here, and don't get in my way." "You!" No matter how much she was trying to ignore it, she can't help but get more and more annoyed as Fujin repeatedly trash-talked her and other Konoha shinobi. Although her sense of belonging to Konoha is not as strong as it used to be following the death of her brother Nawaki and her lover Dan. However, Konoha is still very precious to her, so the fact that Fujin was, again and again, trash-talking Konoha shinobi was starting to get on her nerves. Of course, she is also a Sannin, and no matter how violent her temper is, she controlled it because of the situation. Moreover, Fujin's trashy suggestion of letting the other Konoha shinobi retreat was also correct, so she immediately instructed the Konoha shinobi around her, "Jonin, stay, while the rest will retreat and help in the evacuation process." At this time, Jiraiya, who was buried in the ruins not far away, also jumped out, and while panting heavily, he shouted towards Tsunade, "Be careful of this monster. It can read our intentions and see through all of our attacks." The injured Gamabunta said in a weak tone, "Facing Satoru, we have no chance of winning at all." Damn it! After listening to Jiraiya and Gamabunta's words, Tsunade looked up at Satoru in anger. Her hand was clenched tightly. The tragedy of the village, as well as the dead companions around her, were urging her to get past her fear of blood. Satoru, who was flying in the air, let out a burst of strange laughter at this time, and said, "Ha ha 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 ha! Are you scared? Despite being just lowly humans and insects, you people are actually trying to resist me. It's ridiculous. Ha ha ha. No matter what power you master, medical ninjutsu or something else, it wouldn't stop you from feeling fear. Ha ha ha. For being nothing more than a puppet of the box, you sure like to overestimate yourself," mocked Fujin in a cold tone. Then he took out a storage scroll from inside his cloak, unfolded it, and after making the hand signs, he said, "Release." Poof. With a poof of white smoke, an astonishing amount of black iron sand appeared out of the storage scroll and covered his surroundings. Fujin will not make the same mistake twice, because of the lack of iron sand at his hand last time when facing Orochimaru and the two Edo Hokage. He was forced to use Shikatsumiyaku, but he can't use Shikatsumiyaku so easily. The same goes with Scorch Release. The fact that he can use Scorch Release is only known to the Kazekage Pakura and Fujin, would obviously not reveal it so easily given that the entire Akatsuki organization is still hidden in the dark. So what's left is mainly magnet release. And after learning a lesson from his battle, Fujin made sure to keep an extremely large amount of iron sand at his disposal. When he was satisfied with the amount of iron sand in the surroundings, Fujin made the required hand signs and shouted, "Magnet release, iron sand drizzle." Whyish, 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 whyish. Instantly, iron sand around Fujin hardened into minuscule grains, and like continuous gunshots, they were fired towards Satori floating in the air. Seeing Fujin's attack, Tsunade smiled in joy. With such a large-scale intensive attack, it should be impossible to remain unharmed given the size of that monster. However, the smile on Tsunade's face soon solidified, because Satori used an astonishing speed and managed to either dodge or defend against all the iron sand-hardened grains. Ha ha ha, it's useless. Satori's arrogant laughter echoed throughout the village, as if mocking the entire village. And while Satori was mocking everyone below, Fujin, who continued to attack Satori, mocked him in his mind. "I'll see how long you can continue your mockery." The frontal attack is just a temptation to keep Satori occupied. Meanwhile, Fujin has already prepared a backhand in order to be able to deal with him. I do hope what I am thinking will work.